So we have a topic, interdependence.
So interdependence is, well, it's no longer a matter of choice, but maybe more than that, it's no longer kind of hiding itself. It's very evident. It is the condition that we, and I'd say most of the people in the world, are living inside of with.
Yeah, it's right there. It's immediate. It's inescapable, really, if we want to consider that you can't not acknowledge how interdependent we are.
And that's very true for Buddhism as well, because it used to be back, whatever, probably not that long ago, that there would be teachers in small villages, and that would be the teachings that those people would receive. And now all of Buddhism is interdependent. We hear a little teaching from this tradition, a little teaching from that tradition. So Buddhism, in our experience, is interdependent.
And I've been going back to the start of the pandemic, with thinking about the year of 2025. And at the start of the pandemic, we really saw the three marks of existence become apparent. We saw change, impermanence, we saw suffering, and not self. And it became unmistakably global. I mean, there were headlines about the three marks of existence. We even wrote about it in our book that basically it just became, again, immediate, inescapable, and very evident.
At least to those of us who are looking through that lens.
Well, even those who weren't were hearing about it. That was
Uh,
interesting, right?
yeah,
Those were new terms.
yeah, yeah. And so we're saying something parallel or similar is happening now. What Buddhist teachings have, named as conditionality or interdependence, as the title of the talk, is now appearing in journalism and scholarship and really in everyday conversation. So collectively, we're figuring out that nothing really stands alone. Everything is interdependent on other conditions.
I mean, this is a real gift to me to actually be able to talk to people who don't know much about Buddhism with a terminology that they hear in the news, what they start to, be exposed to. It's an entry into Dharma,
Uh-huh.
actually, that we're collectively discovering.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And, and we discovered an article. Actually, it was a conversation between two New York Times columnists, Thomas Friedman and David Brooks. But Thomas Friedman coined this term for what's going on as Polycene, Polycene, which he identified as a time shaped by overlapping and accelerating forces, which I think is very important, overlapping and accelerating, such as climate disruption, advanced technology, geopolitical instability, and dense global connectivity. That's interesting, dense global connectivity. So it's also an era of something that Linda speaks of somewhat frequently, which is polycrises and polycentric power, where simple explanations no longer hold. And I like this point, adaptive relational responses are required.
Just pausing because there's a lot there. He speaks in long words and many of them. But this sense that the simple explanations that we used to tell ourselves or we used to have or fall back on, we often find they don't work in the same way because of this accelerated, advanced intermixing that's going on. It's almost like something we have to find um, new explanations, new understandings, and we are, in a kind of, I don't know how you feel, but when it feels like it's rapid, there's a kind of pressure to keep up with something, to
Ah,
know it.
I do feel that. Oh, yes, I feel that. Yes, that is stressful. I feel that. And I like the word adaptive Because maybe, what do you think, Linda? I'm just thinking off the top here, but isn't that what we're training ourselves for in reflective meditation? Just continue, not continually, but something like that, adapting to the different conditions that we find ourselves in our meditation and then in our lives, rather than trying to be so directive, more
Mm,
adaptive.
right. I think that's in some ways, Nellie, how we learn from each other, is we learn how each of us are adapting to things. And
Hmm.
we've talked about it as flexibility. We don't use the word all the time, adaptive, but it really does fit.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's so many more choices when we look at how each person is adapting to something.
Hmm.
So to me, it kind of keeps up with the amount of information we're holding. Somehow I can hold it better when I hear it from another person in their experience, how they adapted to
Hmm.
to an event.
Yeah, yeah. So, Buddhism, this idea of interdependence is not new to Buddhism. Well, I've heard about it since I first started to study Buddhism. And back then, it almost sounded a little romantic, for lack
Mm-hmm,
of a better word, like, oh,
mm-hmm,
wow, we're all interconnected.
yeah,
Isn't that wonderful? But actually, it's quite demanding, and it asks more of us, not less,
mm,
because as we've been saying already, causes and conditions are moving faster and they go travel farther than what we in our intentions, our speech, our actions really carry greater ethical weight. You know, what we're doing, what we're saying, what we're not doing, what we're not saying. Well, maybe that doesn't follow with the next thought, but what we are doing and saying reverberates more quickly and really across wider fields of relationships. That's a
that's
hope
an
I
in
have around our podcast, I might add.
that somebody finds it and listens to it and speaks about it and it
Well, our
travels
benefits from it. Yeah.
our benefits. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting of the kind of let's say more people have access to ways to express themselves and a global platform. And they have a kind of influence that once wasn't imaginable. I mean, you can complain, you can write critiques, you can give likes, you can create images, but it's more widely distributed, even though it's still, the impacts are not even. Um, but it is genuinely new that this we haven't lived at a time where we heard so many voices, so
Hmm.
many descriptors of experience, and we don't know what's true and what isn't true, but we hear them all. We hear a lot. We can hear a lot if we're listening.
Right. And this wasn't the word of the year. Maybe I'm a little behind. Maybe this was the word a few years ago, actually. But the term influencers, I hadn't heard that term until fairly recently, that
Mhm.
there really are people who are identified as influencers. But we may perhaps each have our own little spheres of influence.
Right. Right. It does speak to how important speech is and using your words wisely because they really do influence people.
Right. Right. Right.
So, we're really, Nellie and and I mean, we're really presenting this as an ethical challenge of our time. Um, that the question, no longer is, are we interconnected or how interconnected are we? But how do we respond and adapt and develop skillful responses within this truth, within this new era, so to speak, as Thomas Friedman says, within the Polyscene.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, that's a big question to end the talk with, but maybe it's the question of the year, maybe it's the question of the rest of our lives. But let's not get too far out. Let's meditate instead and go in.
Okay. All right.